full disclosure, news and commentary. 2025. Drop in the, I believe it's the 4th edition. So, first of all, so it's great. Next Level had their next show, their second show, episode 2. I guess that would be the Clone Wars. I don't know. And they drew more. And Josh Fields all of a sudden apparently needs his posterior kissed. Okay. First of all, congratulations on getting a bigger crowd. Still, the second smallest crowd that's been in that building. So I guess we're supposed to hoot and holler because now you no longer have the smallest crowd. Well, no, you still do. And now you have the 2 least drawing shows for that building. And you have another show coming up in 2 weeks' time. Good fucking luck. I'm sure it won't do as bad as the first show, but I'm quite sure it won't do as well as the second show. It is what it is. A thing that's kind of aggravated me is, and this goes to all promoters, bookers, that kind of thing. People are not paying money for you to excise your personal demons. They're not paying money to witness your personal growth. Nobody gives a fuck. Do a wrestling show. And do a good one. And do more than 2. And then you can talk about something. Man. Rough stuff. Queen of the Ring. Went to it. Big Mildred Burke fan. So I was very excited. Had my youngest child with me. She was excited. We were at Disney Dining, which is a place where they bring you your food as you watch the movie. Excited about that as well. Had never done the Disney Dine-In movie theater. Do we want the pros or the cons of the movie first? We'll go pro for con. How's that? Pro. And the number 1 pro of the movie. It looked phenomenal. It looked fantastic. It was a period piece, and every bit was covered. The casting in it, precise, beautiful. Everybody looked of the time period. I found myself getting drawn into that aspect of the movie alone. Con. Then I was immediately ripped from getting into the movie by the factual inaccuracies that were so glaring, and most of them worked against themselves. Now, people had a lot to say about, my comments about Iron Claw, how, just not having Chris Von Erich acknowledged in the least, and they were defending that, for the most part. The people that I talked to, it's like, well, it would have made the movie too much of a downer, and it would have made it this, and it would have made it that. Okay. I got you. I will say that the factual inaccuracies in Queen of the Ring were insurmountable. Killam Gillam, who has the coolest wrestling name of all time, and lived to a very ripe old age, and after pro wrestling had perhaps a more interesting life than when she was in pro wrestling, was featured in Queen of the Ring, which was really cool, as was Mae Young, also very cool. But they, spoiler alert, Killam Gillam in the ring, when she's presumably in her 20s, for dramatic effect. It didn't work. And apparently it was in part to give drama to Mildred Burke's final match in the movie. Now, the real story of Mildred Burke's final match, or the match that goes to an hour time limit draw, in real life is very dramatic. Billy Wolf, her ex-husband, and his son who Mildred Burke apparently was in love with as well, which is a fascinating story until he turns on her. Both of them conspire to bust her leg up, so she'll have to drop the title in a shoot fight. But Mildred Burke manages to gut it out and fight this other person off for an hour. That's a pretty dramatic story. That is not the story they tell about the 1 hour draw. The biggest con of this movie are the factual inaccuracies that lead to what should be the climax of the movie, the most exciting part. Oh my God, Mildred Burke went to an hour draw instead of losing that title in a real fight. Instead, an old nagging injury came up and I gutted it out. And that was it. Boy, was my kid confused. My kid just went, that's the big finale. Like, you can have it where the protagonist loses and have it go to great effect. First Rocky movie. You can even have it where a draw occurs, but is considered a powerful thing because you've pushed enough chips on the table. But they didn't do that. The wrestlers who participated in this thing, by and large, were brilliant. Camille, who plays the heavy in the movie, former NWA Women's Champion, who we talked to on the tipping point, she acquitted herself very nicely as the heavy. Didn't do a lot of acting per se, but she looked great. And and the physical stuff looked good. By far, one of the best people in the movie overall was Toni Storm, who's, quite accomplished at pulling off a period look anyway. But as the California, as the West Coast champion that takes on Mildred Burke in a unification match. Another factual inaccuracy that bothered me a lot. One of the coolest Mildred Burke things is, after she divorces Billy Wolf, she basically has to sign over everything in order to get this divorce. Billy Wolf basically won't grant her the divorce unless she basically leaves with nothing. So she's got nothing. But she's trying to kind of make a go of it in the wrestling business, but she's not able to, so she has to go to doing people's hair. And Gorgeous George, who's somebody who, I don't know if she really had contact with him early in his career before he came Gorgeous George. They certainly seem to depict that in the movie. If they did that in order to create sort of like a more dramatic moment when she encounters now Gorgeous George, I get that. It's one of those things that, is it technically a factual inaccuracy? I guess. But it seems like that's more I would put in the category of creative liberties in order to create a more dramatic effect, as opposed to inaccuracies that actually muted the dramatic effect. I just don't get it. In any case, so she encounters Gorgeous George later, but instead of the story being she's doing his hair, instead she just kind of happens to run into him. And then I guess what they were going for is he's going to help her help herself. The real story is she's doing his hair and he goes like, what the fuck happened? And she tells him. And so he just busts money out of his freaking pocket and hands it to him and goes, go get him. Awesome story. Makes Gorgeous George look really great. And Mildred Burke did end up making a comeback. Instead, Gorgeous George goes, I arranged for you to have this match against, and it'll make you big again if you'll do the match. I don't know. It's just bizarre. Just bizarre stuff. The biggest con, perhaps, outside of the factual inaccuracies, this goes under that category, is the complete softening of Billy Wolf, who was, by all accounts, a monster, who physically abused her, sexually abused her, manipulated tons of different women, and they completely muted all of that. When they did have physical violence, it was just like, I slapped her, and then we broke up, and then we got back together. And they seemed to imply like the divorce was, like they stayed married after a while just because it was better for Mildred Burke's career, and she was aware of that, so they're trying to girl boss her through that. It was just, that whole part was a mess, and they screwed up the finale and the finish, so it's just hard. And then during this is what happened to them after, of course they couldn't do that with Killam Gillam, who had perhaps the most interesting life after wrestling, or where the events of the movie took place. But they couldn't talk about her at all because they killed her. So that was weird. But was the complete softening of Billy Wolf, which they dismissed all his monstrous acts as, well, some people didn't like what Billy Wolf did, but it's agreed that he pioneered the push of women's wrestling. Wow. So yeah, Queen of the Ring. As somebody who read the book and then read it a second time to make sure I was ready for the movie, I was happy with so many aspects of it, from a visual standpoint, from a way that they kind of moved the story along for the most part. But boy, the glaringly bad stuff was so bad that it's just almost impossible to recommend this movie, except for the fact that it's a wrestling movie. And I'm so happy to have a wrestling movie that so it goes. Yeah, so I need to wrap this full disclosure up. So what better way to do it than to talk about a thing I really want to do? What do I really want to do? Doing these videos again hasn't reignited anything. I continue to love pro wrestling and follow it and talk about it with people. But I miss teaching it. I miss training people. So what I've come up with is this. Now, I work a lot. My time, like anybody's time, is valuable. So I couldn't help. I've been sketching out class after class on how to book pro wrestling, basically. And it's as much about the creative process and how to hone and refine that. For those that don't know, my education is in creative writing. I have a master's degree in it. I was pursuing a PhD and doing very well at that when I dropped everything to go into pro wrestling, which is unbelievable and ridiculous and great. And I had a number of years where I booked pro wrestling, and I was quite good at it. I still continue to be good at it whenever I pitch ideas, things like that. Here's how it's going to work. So I have these classes laid out. But I don't want to teach a bunch of people at once, and I don't want it to be that impersonal. It would be one-on-one, 30-minute sessions. So here's how you're going to try it out. So if you're watching this and you're one of the first 10 people, let's say, one of the first 10 people to be able to tell me what the name of PCW's biggest show of the year was when I was running it, then you'll get the first class for free. Class is 30 minutes long, and it basically breaks down, I call it booking by the numbers. Basically, the numeric ways that I would use as a guide to booking pro wrestling. You'll see when you take the class. How the classes will go, typically, well, the first one's going to be me teaching by Socratic method one-on-one with you. We can do it over FaceTime kind of thing, or we can do it over the phone. I prefer to do it where we can see each other. And definitely it has to be where we'll be able to talk to each other and communicate. I would suggest taking notes. The class will go about 25 minutes. And then 5 minutes, I'll give you your homework assignment. And then if you decide you want to continue, then we'll talk about that. When do you continue? When would your second lesson be? Whenever the fuck you wanted it to be. That's the thing that I figured out that I came to this revelation. If you're gung-ho and you want to do it every single day, great. If you want to do it once a week, great. If you want to be on a set schedule of when you do it, great. you decide you don't want to do it anymore, that's on you. If you decide you want to like get in an extra half hour, great. Then you just pay a nominal fee and we'll continue, right? If you want to talk about something specifically, we can book time for that. In any case, just tell me the name of PCW's biggest show of the year when I was running it. You'll get the first class for free. We'll make arrangements to talk and hopefully see each other. And then 30 minutes. And at that point, you can try it out, see what you think, see if it's worth your time. For me, it most definitely would be, if you were in wrestling especially. But even if it's just in a creative capacity, because I have a number of friends who are artists of different kinds, it is also a way to be able to... Because when I was figuring out how to book, I realized that I worked better if I had formulas on which to base things. It didn't mean I had to stick exclusively to the formulas, but it meant that I had rough guidelines. And anybody who's been around me or talked to me a lot will go, oh yeah, Steve has certain theories and certain phrases and certain things. And these are things that worked, right? There are people who are bookers, quote unquote bookers, who have done less than 100 shows. I've done many more than 100 shows, right? Under different circumstances. And for those that are bookers or want to be bookers, you can ask specific wrestling questions. Generally, how a class will break down is for the first 5 to 10 minutes, we'll go over the homework. This is after you do the first one. Because the homework will dovetail into the class itself. And then we have like a kind of a question and answer thing, and then I give you the homework, and so it goes. And I have a ton of lessons already planned out and ready to go that you can do at your own leisure. And so that's it. Anyway, I'll be back with another full disclosure sooner rather than later, because I'm beginning to pile up things that I want to talk about, clever little titles that I have. One of them is called The Problem with Larry Lazard. I've been kind of trying to figure out how to approach that one. In any case, thanks for listening. Full disclosure marches on.